Hey everybody, good news! I got a new microphone. So we're a step up from the gaming headset I used for the first few episodes. That out of the way, let's talk about... Wait, what was the wheel choice for this episode? I just lost my brain of thought. And my ability to do English. Alright, Rationality Community. They know ethics and statistics, right? Well, I did fail about every statistics course I took, so of course I'm an expert. Barry, get the title card!
The story will continue after this.
The Rationality Community is a gathering of people who follow futurist and or rationalist philosophies, who seek to utilize these philosophies to improve the world in the most effective way possible. So one could call these rationalists, who use their altruistic ideas of future betterment effectively, something like altruistic efficienters, or just steal the name of a similar group of people and say effective altruism. Effective altruism itself is defined as a philosophical and social movement that seeks to benefit as many people as possible. Divided more into two parts, impartial and sentimental, followers of this idea see that charity and contribution to the future of mankind is important. A lot of the top 1% of the world seem to like this idea, either out of public relations, a want for technological advancements, or the goodness of their hearts. One such group of like-minded individuals who want to improve the world and are not philanthropist billionaires is the online forum LessWrong. LessWrong, created in 2009 to create and promote a community of more rational people through avoiding biases and evaluating evidence, sort of a Mr. Spock from Star Trek thing going on there. Like robotic humanoids who see the most rational answer and how to achieve it. This might come back to bite us though, so let's escape this bit and go back to the one place science hasn't been. Back in time! That sounds cool. The whole concept of the rationality community and effective altruism itself falls down to one category of thought from the 20th century. Futurism. Futurism itself is an artistic movement which gained traction in France, Italy, and the Soviet Union. But we're not here to talk about art, even though I love the style and the ones that were influenced by it. We're here to talk about the motives behind the art. Futurism. Futurist thought can be defined as the predictions taken by scientists and the general hope for, or fear of, the future based on various collections of data and how it could be implemented. This field is broadly defined through this, and it leads more into a field that I can talk about easily, because the Wikipedia page and the sources I've found for it are easy for a stupid, sexy lad like myself. What we're looking at, a more specific form of futurism if I got my notes right, falls under the field itself known as futurology, or future studies, which itself, with another definition, is the study of technological and societal advancements in a somewhat hypothetical manner. You know, stuff with robots, uploading consciousnesses to the internet, space colonization, and the dystopia that is our inevitable brave new world. You can see where a chunk of our altruistic friends want the world to be. A utopia. Some world where we all can live with candy and puppies, and uploading our consciousnesses into the collective in the name of the Hive Controller, XAEAXII. I'm of course talking about the concept of transhumanism. Now, transhumanism can take many forms: longer lifespans of nanomachines, uploading consciousnesses to the cloud, uplifting animals, or even curing every pre-existing condition to shut down health insurance companies. All that matters to the transhumanist is that we can improve or completely alter the human species for better, which goes great with our theme of effective altruism. Because who doesn't want these movies or all these David Brin books to become true if it means a better world? Who doesn't want to live forever and not die to something that they have a predisposition to? Quite rationally, if you ask me, but I can't understand the critical backlash of losing the human experience that we all get one, or maybe more, rounds of. But it also means I have to talk about rationalism now. Rationalism was a philosophical movement best represented by thinkers like René Descartes and Leibniz. The basis of the movement is that everything there is to know can be deduced through logic and reason. The other key portion is a sense of radical doubt on which can be seen through Descartes' philosophy specifically. Descartes doubted everything that he could not prove. Eventually, the only thing he knew for sure was that he was doubting. If he was doubting, he had to exist, which is a belief that allowed himself to build back a stronger conception of reality. Having high standards for the truth, doubting beliefs with no backing, and using logic to justify itself is a common thread from the rationalists of the 17th century to the rationalists of today. Another closely associated idea with rationalist thinking is rationalist thought. Rationalist thought describes rationalism as a body of work that starts with a thinker like Descartes and continues to this very day. While with Futurism, you have people who have an intense interest in predictions of the future by people called futurists who study futurology, who want to look into what most likely will happen in the future. We can see that Futurism has some of its foundation inside of rationality in general, because predictions require a solid basis in logic and reality in order for it to continue. Futurists work in a variety of different fields, including corporate and governmental, to make decisions based on the long-term and short-term trends. Remember Futurism, the study of the future? This is generally not a clearly defined movement, but instead a group of disparately connected people asking, both founded on solid logic, intake of data, and a high standard for what should be recognized as a credible prediction. Rationalism and Futurism are effectively intertwined today. Effective altruism, which bases itself off rational future prediction, is necessarily founded on both of these pillars. Hey look, we're back where we started. Wow, there's even this little shortcut I could have taken. Effective altruism itself came about at the beginning of the millennia, with rising concerns of existential threats like global warming, poverty, and other stock-crashing events motivating the wealthy to give away some of their money. Effective altruism, or EA for short, as a movement, has produced several different ways to produce the most effective philanthropic actions. For instance, Effective Altruism Global is a conference that meets relatively regularly with 3 planned meetings for 2022 alone. It is a collection of philanthropic organizations and nerds, with cash to go into the most effective causes for a number of different large-scale issues. The first summit by this organization was in 2013, but there have been previous organizations with similar goals or objectives prior to that date. Issues that philanthropy presents as these conferences include global warming, various scientific research needs, technological development, and much more, all of which can somehow be shown statistically to help the world. Now here's where LessWrong comes in. Eliza Yudkowsky, a futurist himself and co-founder of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, founded LessWrong as a community devoted to refining the art of human rationality. LessWrong's users describe themselves as a community that, even though they will never find the perfect answer to everything, strive to be less wrong each and every day. So paraphrasing the same paraphrasing Wikipedia made for Yudkowsky for a good reason then. LessWrong was started in 2009 after Yudkowsky moved emails and blog posts he created starting in the earlier part of the decade to a site he saw as more necessary to teach people about rationalism. Using a forum style, the site would gain traction, and by 2011 they would have reached what the community called its golden age, with 15,000 page views a day. By 2013, a large part of the core community left LessWrong for other sites. Yudkowsky and many others remained on the site and helped transition it more towards AI research while keeping its core value of teaching rationalist thought. Many of these leaving the site migrated to the site Slate Star Codex, a blog by LessWrong and Rationality Community member Scott Alexander, which was also focused on the same futurist ideas seen in posts on LessWrong. While it was discontinued in 2020, it did have a successor that launched in 2021, and like any community on the internet, the only reason one sprouted off of the other was because of discourse. Some of these ejectors have deemed LessWrong as more of a site focused on bringing forth the robot uprising, not the improvement of humanity. Which does make sense. A lot of LessWrong users are proponents of transhumanism. But what about the other ones? Who are they? To make it easier for myself and the writing team, the outliers, who are not transhumanists, mainly fall under futurist thought and want to see, much like those of effective altruism, a betterment of humanity for means other than just making everyone part of the Borg. Meanwhile, the LessWrong community at large looks to use the same AI technologies to improve the world. But who are those people? Most of them are a really eclectic circle of people who all describe themselves, generally, as rationalists. These people have an interest in artificial intelligence, and many of them are computer programmers, either for their job or in their spare time. Some are physical scientists, but most of the community is focused on effective altruism in general. The hard question now is, how does EA play into rational thinking in LessWrong? Well, to put it simply, the community is divided on this. In one camp, LessWrong has become closely associated with effective altruism. Both are utilitarian in nature and want the world to be better with the help of the minds behind the boards. In 2014, over a fifth of LessWrong members consider themselves proponents of effective altruism. Many of their ideas behind the use of better AI and existential risk reduction can be seen in effective altruism, as many of these proposals and boards within the community work towards these goals. As for rationality, from what the team found in their research, we will say that LessWrong and effective altruism are not connected to the ideology of rationality founded by Descartes and the Enlightenment. Instead, they are connected to the idea of scientific empiricism and using mathematics to determine what saves the most lives at the least cost. So that's a string we can cut from the conspiracy board. As for the group that says they don't, they believe they disassociate themselves from effective altruism in some circles, but others are okay with being lumped in for the betterment of humanity. Those who unsubscribe from the effective altruism circles see issues with the calculation process that EA supports. Many of the issues align themselves in favor of philanthropies that save the greatest amount of human lives. One critique of this is that it doesn't consider true lifespans. Imagine you save a simoleon from malaria. But then 2 days later, he is shot by a warlord. In this situation, you did not actually save the full life, but just 2 days of a human life. There are also issues of the scientific evidence used for more catastrophe-based issues, like carbon offsetting. Often, there is either misrepresentation of how much carbon is being offset by saving a forest, as sometimes forests who don't need saving are claimed to be about to be cut down, generating differences in how much carbon was actually being offset and how much was claimed to be. I really don't know where I was going with this. Whenever Productions has a good video on this, and I'll put the link in the description. Miscalculation, true lifespans, and visibility are critiques. I will say that in the research for this on LessWrong, those who wrote critiques on effective altruism often said they supported effective altruism and wanted to subject their opinions to the best possible counter-argument. For the philanthropy-minded LessWrong, this definitely shows self-consistency, as the point of their critique is to not destroy but instead subject themselves to rationality. These critiques are not meant to stop all philanthropy, but instead aim to make adjustments to the system of effective altruism. Of course, this now leads me into another question that I bring up a lot in every episode of here, from here on out. Why they do that? Human-AI hybrids, larger reliance on artificial intelligence, and a lot of cool technological stuff. All of this working to improve our quality of life by doing things like engineering the perfect human, curing physical disabilities, and getting rid of pre-existing medical conditions through things like nanomachines. Seeing the possibility of human-robot hybrids, or even just genetic engineering for the loss of bad genes, could set the species forward by a lot. And even outside of human biology, we can see rationality used for larger world problems. An existential risk is any risk that has the potential to eliminate all of humanity, or at the very least, kill large swaths of the global population, leaving the survivors without sufficient means to rebuild society to current standards of living. Things like global warming, giant asteroids, flaming hot Mountain Dew, or whatever disease is ravaging the planet when this video is released. But how does effective altruism solve these problems? Well, that's easy. Through effective altruism, the more well-off or forward-thinking give their money to organizations who happen to stem these problems before they happen. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are two examples of the sort of rich technocrats who believe or had their thinking affected by effective altruism. And LessWrong, those nerds who probably aren't tech millionaires, how do they play into it, you may ask? AI increases efficiency and delegates tasks as the human population declines. Many of these nerds are programmers or supportive programmers in efforts to expand AI. As you can see, LessWrong is, in some aspects, a hub for folks of all kinds who want to make the world a better place with AI. One could see them as a think tank who talks in forums instead of a boardroom. Many of these people get into philanthropy, especially with the early development of effective altruism, where 31% of effective altruism members heard of it originally through LessWrong. And let's not forget, there is one thing nowadays that it seems LessWrong is popular for, and that is the thought experiment known as Roko's Basilisk. Hey, first warning here. I understand that since this is the internet, you're probably going to keep watching this either out of spite or curiosity, but if you have not heard of it or would rather save your mind from this info hazard, please skip ahead to whatever time is going to be sitting right next to my head. Hey look, a second warning. Well, you've been warned. Should you continue past this point, I cannot help you. Inoculus Basilici nunc es. Roko's Basilisk is a thought experiment posed by LessWrong user Roko in 2010. It's a bit against the common viewpoint of universal betterment because it involves a robot who will torture anyone who has ever fought against constructing it. Now, I'm not good at explaining things that aren't cultural, and Kyle Hill has 2 good videos on this, so I'm just going to do what every substitute teacher does and play the part we need on this convenient TV.
The thought experiment that is Roko's Basilisk starts like this. Suppose that in the future we are able to create a hyper-intelligent AI, something straight out of the singularity. We then ask that AI, as we might, to help us optimize all aspects of human civilization. But then, for reasons unknowable to beings like us compared to its intelligence, it decides that the first step towards optimization starts with inflicting eternal torment on every single human being that didn't want it to come to fruition or didn't help it come into existence in the first place. After all, how can you optimize without the optimizer?
Now, you might be wondering, how does a robot who murders anyone who works against it good for human betterment? Well, Tobias, here's your answer. Roko's Basilisk was proposed to be a benevolent AI overlord, wanting to optimize humanity much like a lot of people want in a robotic utopian future. The part where we get into murder is that the Basilisk will torture those who do not agree with its construction, therefore uniting humanity under a common goal and removing conflicts that may arise because of it. I mean, after all, who would want to doom their future offspring to torture, or even their own revived consciousness just because some robot... I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. Now, with us making our way out of the lair of the beast, I suggest you don't tell anyone unless they too face the wrath of the Basilisk. So tell your enemies or that one coach who hits on the junior high kids. For those of you who decided to skip that part, welcome to the different part, free of intrusive thoughts and other nasty things giving the community a bad reputation. Speaking of which, one of the problems with LessWrong itself is that they tend to be focused incredibly on their own fields. That being so means that they all talk in jargon. Jargon usually refers to complicated terms only those in specific fields know, and is often misused to hide simple things, usually screw-ups, behind nonsense to either convince or confuse anyone listening who is unfamiliar with the techno-babble they come up with. An issue identified by one physicist who posted articles critiquing modern science faced commenters not getting some basic concepts in physics, like having concepts that only apply to time applying to space or vice versa. Her lack of favorability on the site eventually led to her not making any more content. In a discussion with an admin, the admin pointed out that the blog is focused on abstract concepts and not modern science or current experiments. She started her own blog since then. I'm not going into specifics, I just wanted to put this here to say that they do damage minds with ideas they propose in the name of effective altruism. And again, for your own sanity, don't look it up, please. Iomenim bestia te vidit, sed eius conspectum effugere potus. But that ominous cultic music does lead me to a criticism, that being that LessWrong is a doomsday cult of the singularity. LessWrong could be considered so focused on the transhumanist project that often many people are obsessed with objectives like the singularity as a hope for the betterment of mankind over other possibilities. This makes sense. Many LessWrong folks are programmers who are very focused on how computers have and will continue to make life better for people. But saying that this mortal coil is limiting and banging on drums doesn't have the greatest effect on the morale of people outside the subculture looking in. A more superficial viewpoint is that those of the rationality community have a superiority complex. A more psychological standpoint, it's where people will go out of their way to do good deeds, or the illustration of such, when being observed. This is because being seen as good, smart, or well-mannered are positive traits in societal space. Individuals showing these traits are treated better, talked about better, and overall have a better experience. Inside of the LessWrong community, those who seem smarter are discussed more and have their articles circulated more. Additionally, people attempting to enter the LessWrong community have reported rejection from the community based on dislike of their articles, despite scientific validity. Although we should remember that such sources are biased by the negative experience. Some may say that this fight for perceived intelligence produces a superiority complex focused on it, rather than true intelligence, which might be correlated. One issue of the notion of changing minds via logic is that people don't actually view logic empirically, but instead through their own complicated psyche and neuroticism. They are going to seek out information and arguments that prove their point without verification that their evidence is superior to their opponents. Overall, this can bring in tactics that try and disregard your opponent's credibility without attacking their arguments. LessWrong articles are incredibly hard to read without backgrounds in the sciences, or even with backgrounds in science. Many people write with incredibly formal language for words or phrases which can be cut down or simplified to save both the reader and the author time. Reading through the critiques of effective altruism were especially difficult because some of the articles were quite slapdash in the use of jargon. And because our researcher has a background in law and psychology instead of science or pseudoscience, except for a distinct love of Heinlein, we were on the back foot. That's the rationality community, ranging from billionaires who want to see clean water in the hands of people not working for Nestle, to future-loving computer nerds in their computer rooms with their computer ideas. While one can see them as idealists for a better humanity, others have come to the conclusion that they are full of themselves only because of the idea that humanity can be better off. This reporter thinks that he wandered into the wrong convention center as I'm getting stared at and called mean, long words I do not understand. No, back to you, Wheel. Ah!
Thanks, Mick. Coming up next, me spinning before we go to the credits. Stay tuned.
Zero 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 one zero 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 one one zero 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 one one zero 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 one 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 zero 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 one zero 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 one zero 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 one one.
Come on, Sacro Lake, my battery. My humans